Hello everyone and welcome back to another review or reaction video. I really wanted to react to something that I was looking forward to. If you maybe know him, I think maybe not because he's really underrated. IcebergMusic. He makes like rankings or sort of end of the year videos that I really like about Monster Cat and NCS. For example, like what he did with the best NCS songs of 2024 so far, from January up until June. And I was clicking on this one, the best and worst songs of 2024, but then I realized I really want to react to it, because I was typing in the comments and I was like, nah, let's do a full reaction. I like it more. So let's do it, let's go.
Hello and welcome to another Iceberg video. Last time I talked about Monster Cat, and now it's finally time to talk about the best and worst of NCS. So with that out of the way, let's talk about some dishonorable mentions.
First, dishonorable mentions.
By Domth. The leads are pretty annoying here, and having them jump octaves just makes it even worse for me. Love You Anyway by...
Okay, so I get why people really can dislike Sound Clash. The song is of course clashy. The title says it already. It goes really deep, it goes really high, especially that high drop. That was really mind-blowing to me. Yeah, I can really see why people dislike it. Can I really explain it in another way? Yeah, maybe that the production is just falling flat at some point for some. For me, it's really enjoyable. I like that gritty, that hard, that nice overall sound design of Jont in the neurofunk or drum and bass scheme. So yeah, that's my thought on it, but I get why he dislikes it.
Lads. Now I understand why people didn't like Love You by In Touch at the beginning of the year.
Okay, so Love You Anyway by Lads. Yeah, Love You by In Touch wasn't great either. I did not really like it. It was not like bad, so 6.8 is still a nice rating for it, I guess. But nothing really was in my, as a feeling or like as an emotion that really wanted to give it a nicer rating. But Let's Love You Anyway was totally different for me, because that was just a different type of vibe. It indeed had that garage sort of vibe, maybe that future house vibe, damn Jesus Christ. And the overall cute vocals, yeah, I like it. I like that. Those were interesting to have. So, yeah, I like it. I cannot really see why you wouldn't like it. As much as Sound Clash, of course.
Breakable by Lost Sky, Angel Playa, and Chris Linton. There should be no reason for so much star power to provide so little. The choir elements feel forced, and there isn't much in the production that's noteworthy here.
I get that. It's of course a very, well, underwhelming song if you expect like a grand, powerful Lost Sky song. That if you know him like from back in the day. Fearless was pretty powerful. Lost also. Yeah, later down the line he became a little bit chiller, and when Angel Playa was also in the collab, I was really excited, and to have Chris back also as well. It kind of fell flat, but do I really like it still? Of course, I gave it a 10 out of 10 in the yearly ranking. Yeah, I see why you can say this, by the way. It can really be an underwhelming song if you expect a great banger. Not one at all.
By Mustafa and MQX. Well, the concept's there, but the mixing is pretty messy. A lot of important elements are drowned out in the mix, most likely by the mids of the kick.
Yeah, I sort of see why. I am too generous sometimes. I gave it a 9.9. Why? I can headbang. Yeah, some songs I don't have really a opinion or a reason why I like it so much.
You Get Me High by Rex Hooligan. I don't like the high-pitched vocals here, and the production elsewhere pretty much forces me to pay attention to it.
Yeah, the song was different than, for example, After the End by Rex Hooligan. Get You High? What was it again? Get Me High. Yeah, it was kinda boring. Although the rhythm is there, I like that. The vocals or like vocal samples, vocal chops were a little bit annoying. Still enjoyable at some parts, and it's just enjoyable. So 7.3 was the rating for me.
Your Mind by Ripple. Close to making my list proper because it seems clumsy in both concept and execution. The fast-paced vocals feel out of place and the production is pretty random overall. And finally,
Yeah, random, not so my opinion. Nah, not really random in my eyes. It is quite underwhelming if you especially compare to Gimme that came out all the way back in December. Well, not all the way back, but like all the way forward. Whatever. Yeah, underwhelming. His worst for sure. 7.2. It was still enjoyable though, because well, if I give it a 7 or higher, I can really listen to it. But to compare it to his other work, nah, not so great.
Party Pioneers by
Oh,
Rouge and Noise.
okay.
Well, this one is just corny and then some. The vocals are really annoying, and it kind of reminds me of one of those commercial pop techno tracks that more mainstream producers make. We
Sure.
absolutely don't need any more of those.
Sure. Yeah, I get it. I am a sucker for that song. I don't know why I like it so much. I heard it one time and I was like, yeah, really nice. I was so happy. You can maybe remember the review of it. But then I just completely was loving it at the most. 10 out of 10. I don't know why. I like the cute vocals. It's upbeat. It's nice.
With that, it's time to talk about the top 10 worst NCS
The top 10
tracks
worst. Okay, I'm
of
excited.
2024.
I'm
Number
curious.
10. So let me get this straight. You're given the opportunity to release the first NCS track of the year, and it actually winds up being pretty good, providing some new potential
Okay,
and
what?
maybe a new perspective on Neurofunk.
Oh,
And
bass face.
This is how you follow it up?
Yeah, okay, before... Well, let's him talk first, though.
You know how Ripple initially started his 2024 with a bad release, but eventually wound up winning some critics and fans over in his following tracks?
Yeah.
Well, Janth was the exact opposite, providing a promising
Yeah.
start to the year only for his momentum to fall apart.
He also already
This was a
mentioned
track I knew would make
Soundclash.
my list from the moment I heard it, and to explain why, let's play the comparison game. I think one of the main
Okay.
reasons why what worked for me was because some of the growls were energetic, but also fairly
Agree.
intriguing with the higher pitched
Yeah.
resonances. Bass
That's
Face, on
right.
the other hand, was less of a growl and more of a moan, alternating with some vocals that don't really
More
bring
of a
anything to
moan.
the table. They're just there to fill up space, but at the same time, it feels like he's taking the easy way out. So overall,
Yeah.
this one's a clumsy letdown.
Yeah, before we go on, yeah, it is sort of emptier than what. It's just the wild sound design, the wild approach that I really like. It goes beyond what, in my opinion, and Soundclash goes even more beyond Bassface. So what, then Bassface, then Soundclash. I don't know why I like this sort of stuff so much. It's just I like it.
And while Janth was able to get himself a fairly welcome debut on Monster Cat, he
Oh, yeah,
really
of
could have
course.
done better taking
His
advantage
Monster
of
Cat
his
release.
potential here. Because this is just not something worth being a bass face over. Number 9. But on the topic of Neurofunk drops that stunk up the place.
Oh, this song. Right. Yeah. The picks here, I get them. Not
A late
mind-blowing
arrival
to
the
be
label, and
so
one
far.
that took a couple of subsequent listens to realize, yeah, no, this track's just not good. It's the sort of track that provides momentum only to waste it. But even
Yeah, I kinda see that why he says this, by the way. The whole song just builds something up, builds something towards something, and then you get indeed that drop. So yeah, I get that.
then, the potential here is a lot more shaky than it should be. In the break, the production could have been a lot fuller if there was better mixing around the ambience, which probably shows the most promise out of anything. Cherry's vocals are a bit inconsistent. The vocal chops around it are a bit more annoying, and the hook is pretty
The vocals I get,
repetitive.
yeah.
But none of that even matters
They don't do
because
anything
it's
to me.
the drop that gets on my nerves the most. The fake out is fine, but the drop is prioritized by a monotonous sustain that goes on for so long. It overpowers the mix
I like
and the weird
that.
percussion, and it goes absolutely nowhere as the drop progresses. Basically, this is NCS's equivalent of You Want Me by Dirty Phonics and Circadian, a track
No clue what he's talking about.
that would have made my worst list proper on Monster Cat if
Monster
it
Cat
wasn't
song?
for some truly awful competition.
Eventually, I will know
on
the song.
NCS, though, especially this year, there isn't as much of an excuse here. Why'd you gotta do us like that?
That one was so cheap. That was so cheap. The vocals, I get what he said there. They are sort of not really following the song, if you get what I mean. So I get that. I'm again generous, so I like it. It was such a wild song.
Number 8. It was a tale of two halves on NCS. The first half, as I mentioned in my mid-year video, it felt more bland than downright bad. Not a lot of awful songs, but not a lot of standouts either. And perhaps one of the blandest moments of the year was the Broken String album by Clarkson Shia Mansell. It was just screaming Dude Perfect within most of its tracks. None of them were bad enough to make my list, but the album push overall was just exhausting. Mainly because I knew what to expect with every release. So when an album push is so predictable and so tiring, there's no reason for someone else to follow in their footsteps.
Hello. Yeah. Okay, I want to first say something. When I knew Hollow was coming out, I was expecting a Broken String approach. Of course, not exactly the same, because this is not Clark's. That he is saying this, I get that. I remember I was sort of not as intrigued when it came out as for these songs for Broken String. And yes, this is still a more worse song than the Broken String songs, but still enjoyable. 8.5.
This song felt overhyped and then some. Unlike Pluto as an artist,
really
that I feel like I should know more about at this point. I didn't know exactly what to expect on his arrival, but I wasn't expecting this. An electronic rock song that doesn't provide any intrigue, and if you're going to push for electronic rock in general, don't do it in the middle of an already existing album push. Categorized as
that was a thing that NCS didn't really had to do. Yeah, I agree.
Indie dance, nah, that's baffling. It's hard.
Wait, what did he say?
Existing album push. Categorized as indie dance, nah, that's baffling. It's
wait, is this a genre title, indie dance? I want to check it out, if it's like that. Oh yeah, they did. Okay, well. But it's orange because NCS used orange back in the day in the promotion area for rock, so I get the color. But to label it as indie dance, yeah, there's something going wrong on there.
Hard to dance too. The production doesn't really provide much alongside unlike Pluto's vocals, and then there's the drop. If you even want to call it that, because I don't.
Which
prioritized by a guitar solo that's all over the place, and it feels so sour on occasion. I know enough about music theory to know that I don't know what he was thinking here.
I'm just realizing I'm too generous. Like, I'm really generous for rating songs. 8.5 for this, and I agree on some parts. And I still gave it an 8.5.
Much around it that makes up for all of these issues. The sort of track that feels so
I'm just pleased really easily.
Inside.
Because I don't like mainstream.
Number 7. Let's talk about vocal sampling. Okay. I'm going to key you in on a little secret. If a track contains vocals and a feature isn't explicitly mentioned, there's a chance you might hear this vocal again in a track that's completely different. For example, Guide You Home by Diviners in Level 8 could have made my honorable mentions, but I think Omiru and Wonders had better tracks using that same vocal. On the other side of the spectrum, you've got Repeating by Punctual, a track that could have made my worst list proper, but there was a big room techno track that I heard with that sample that was even worse. So what happens when you initially hear a vocal in a track that you like, and then you hear it again in a track that's a lot less invigorating and a lot more insipid?
I wanna dance. Yeah, why am I so generous, man? 8.7 for this one.
Much like Hollow, this is one of those absence of good sort of tracks, where certain elements bug me, but what bugs me more is that nothing really makes up for it. And it's another track that, from my perspective, feels like it was released at the wrong time. When it comes to this particular
Why?
vocal sample, it can be used well,
What?
but pity
Wait,
just...
wait, wait. Why did he say that? It came out at the wrong time? Well, this is still the first half of the year, right? I Wanna Dance. Yeah, it was. April? I don't remember. Yeah, I felt like January was still like a 2023 vibe. So like January of last year. It was still in the bad 2023 vibes. February and March really climbed up the mountain fast for me. So it really came out at the wrong time? I don't know.
overdoes it here. It doesn't help that the drop doesn't seem to pack as much of a punch as other hard techno tracks on the label.
True.
The fake out in the second drop is pretty sloppy as well.
Oh, that's... I like it one. It was funny.
Try to go for a more playful tone, which makes no sense here. And it feels like whatever he's trying to do isn't working. And while we're on the topic of vocal samples that really shouldn't get on my nerves as much as they do, number 6.
Oh, okay.
I'll try not to go too hard on
I still something to say about I Wanna Dance? Well, I get that. I really like that build-up, that really long build-up. That really upped the rating for me. That rose the rating.
This guy, because he seems like a relatively newer producer. Try not to go too hard on this guy because he seems
like a relatively... someone?
Newer producer.
Just this
Having
guy.
your second ever release find a way to this label, it kind of feels like you're jumping into the deep end, and
who are we talking to?
But if you are going to do that, tech house might be one of the worst genres to do
Feel like?
with.
Feel like. His second ever release was NCS? Oh wow.
What's interesting is that NCS, in comparison to other labels, has actually done fairly well with managing tech house overall, but the tracks that go wrong, well, more often than not wind up making this list. There are two main problems I have with this track. First off, the arpeggio in the drop is really bland, and secondly, the vocal sample. I eventually realized it can't...
I like that one. Like, when it came out in April, I don't remember, I heard it like in October again when I was in the bus, and I was really vibing to it. I was like, oh, it's actually better than I remember, but let him continue.
It can be utilized in a menacing way, but here it kind of reminds me of Miniskirt by Will K and Shift Key, except a lot less flirtatious and a bit more resigned. Ironically, it's utilized in a drop that feels just as indifferent. And again, there isn't much in the production I could highlight, which makes this a pretty bad first impression.
But the 7.5 isn't that high for me as well.
He's got every chance to redeem himself, but he'll have to put up a better fight.
And by the way, shout out to AXC, because he was in the premiere of Ranking Every NCS Song, and he commented on my review of it. It was a little bit earlier, that's why I think noticed that really big video.
Number 5. Crush Candy is not on this list.
I was like, oh my god, it's coming up.
Their lone release didn't really give me any reason to return to it, but it didn't infuriate me as much as it did others.
Yeah, same. 7.0. 7.0.
Apparently. I've said it before, I'll say it again. If you want to make my worst list, usually being boring isn't going to be enough. It often has to linger and get stuck.
That's why the 6 range for me in the ratings is boring, but still good in the sense that I don't hate it.
In my head for all of the wrong reasons. This is why Dreamin' by Noise was close to missing my worst list proper last year. If you're wondering, La Manera de Vivir probably would have replaced it. And it's also why this green circle is this high on this list.
Yeah, you could shoot me if you want. I don't know why I like this so much. Let's give an explanation to Iceberg if he sees this. I don't know why I like almost every song on the label so much. It's just, I don't really like songs that are coming out in my country, in the Netherlands. I don't really like English pop music that much. I'm not really a mainstream guy that listens to whatever DJ you want to call. I'm really focused on that more downwards, that more interesting, unique EDM vibe, the more hard-dired fans. So yeah, that's why I can really enjoy almost everything, because I just like overall EDM so much, if this made any sense.
I'm usually not an
Oh, that basically just cut out there? I like that.
optimist when it comes to tracks that take a more exotic route. Tribal maybe,
Las
but
Falas.
this felt like it was doomed from the start. First off, there should be no
Really?
reason for a trap song to be less than 2 minutes long, because that just
True.
pressures for quicker, more careless progression as proven
It was
here.
short.
The vocals seem to clash with the instrumentation in the break, and the overall concept just isn't my cup of tea. And as for the drops, they're prioritized by some vocal chops which wind up being annoying here.
Actually,
there's no sort of unpredictability, it's just rinse and repeat heading into the second part of the track. When Ariadne's electro-pop version of Karma packs more of a punch, that poses a lot of questions. Number 4. I knew when I put this artist in my dishonorable mentions last year, I was going to get some stick. It's only
was it Roynox? I
gotten more personal since.
Maybe
Look,
Memory
he had
Box
some
is
pretty
here.
memorable releases before his return, so it's kind of shocking that an artist I enjoyed back then would make me so uncomfortable now.
What song is this?
But somehow, Diamond Eyes found a way to do it.
Oh. Explicit warning. Oh, explicit warning, guys. Oh yeah, because he said fuck.
When Diamond Eyes made his return with Devil, I thought it was pretty disappointing. I said
oh yeah, I remember that. I was so stoked.
before that I really didn't like the lyrics here, mainly because they provide a sort of sacrilegious theming that I absolutely couldn't stand, and I was hoping he wouldn't commit to. Take a wild guess as to what happened. At least Fell for a Demon provided a clear tone of regret, but with Diamond Eyes, it feels like nothing but mixed messages. The lyricism is a disaster.
Yeah,
Diamond Eyes starts off flirtatious, but when he tries to provide a turn of events, he does so with a sort of nonchalant resignation. The Michael Myers reference is perhaps one of the most unnecessary ones I've heard all year, and
I don't know what he's talking about.
the drop isn't any good either. The melody is just random, the lead stack doesn't have anything going
It is quite random.
And tone-wise,
why do I like this? Why do I, again, like this?
It meshes with next to nothing.
7.5,
it's a track
by the way.
That's gotten worse with every single listen. I just want him to go back to making songs like Everything. That's not too much to ask.
But he made really good stuff later.
Number 3. I don't think there's a top 3 that could better encapsulate
I'm so
the
excited
worst of
what
NCS in
there is
2024.
here.
Mainly because it
maybe it one, that orange circle, that's actually trap. A really boring one. Stick your mind, not stick around you, maybe.
Revolves around a particular genre, that being Brazilian funk. I'll get into the details of the issues behind Brazilian funk later, but for now, we start with an artist I've tried to defend. I thought Bane was tolerable, and Vita Nova had some energy around it. The vocal samples there kind of reminded me of Despicable Me for some reason, but I couldn't defend this one, especially after listening further.
Bandido Funk. Yeah, okay.
This was another track that soured on me a ton. I thought I could shake this one off, but there were multiple factors that ranged from messy to borderline unbearable. One issue
I sort of get why Brazilian funk is so hated. But that sort of switch up there with the tempo, I may be mistaken as trap, but I feel like it's a trap switch up. I really like that there. It's renewing, it's refreshing. It still fits the vibe, and I really can headbang on it. Did I expect this song to be here on the list? Well, maybe I could have.
Often have with Brazilian funk is that the production is often overly distorted. The impact kick in the first drop is an example of such, and it just overpowers everything else in the mix. As it progresses, it gets more confusing, where the kick is awkwardly timed in the second drop, providing a weird sort of pacing. But what
that's the one I mentioned, the sort of trap feeling I get.
What I hate most about this track are the vocal chops within the break. Why are they there, and are they even supposed to mean anything? It was a production I never got and never realized I couldn't stand until recently.
I realize I do like too much.
And it doesn't seem like this style's going to overpower this label for much longer.
But I just generally get much enjoyment out of many songs. Number 2.
Yeah, I think I knew this one was coming.
Not number 1! Not number 1! Yeah. The one I agree on!
I can imagine this is probably the worst NCS track of the year to a lot of people.
Oh,
mainly
sure.
Because it's quite possibly one of the most unnecessarily vulgar releases NCS has had in recent
Yeah.
memory. I'll admit, having NCS censor a lot of it on the official channel, it's made it a bit more tolerable there, but that doesn't
Wait,
change
they
how
really
messed
censored stuff? Well, I cannot even hear that because it's so in your face that they are singing like this.
up the
It feels like
uncensored
that.
lyrics are, where the violence and suggestive content is blatant
Yeah.
and then some. And the production is once again really sloppy. The percussion is a bit more minimalist, which could have worked better in comparison to other Brazilian funk tracks, but the overly
True.
distorted kick and the tacky plex are just poorly mixed.
Yeah.
And that makes the vocals a bit more unclear. This is simply a track that doesn't
Also
belong
that.
anywhere near this label. Maybe it's best we put this one in the dirts. Number 1.
I'm excited for this one. Just to go on about Rally Up. Yeah, Rally Up was such a disappointment. What actually happened, I don't fucking know. I think NCS regrets releasing it because they know we all hate it. Well, I cannot say hate it. I only hate one song on the label, and it's Cradles. I just dislike this one. It did not accomplish anything. It did not do anything. It's laughable sometimes. Not to hate on Grioten and the other artist, Xiso or something like that. I cannot pronounce stuff. It's just not my cup of tea at all. It's more like a Ready Down.
Before
Number
I reveal
one.
which track takes my number 1 spot, I want to talk about what is made
Can I guess it maybe? Well, I was expecting Rally Up, but damn, I don't know.
Brazilian funk so bad for this label. I mentioned last year that
Maybe
alongside its
Twisted?
distorted production,
Buzzin', I mean.
there's
Twisted
some
is the artist.
suggestive content that seems to tell a bigger story about the culture within. But I don't think that's what infuriates me the most. No, it's the fact that they were making the same mistake Trap Nation made, by prioritizing commercial profit over reliability and the interest of the fan base. It seems like, at the time, they didn't know or
2023
maybe
be
didn't
like.
even care about the content within and the influence around it. Which all leads to this question. Can one of these tracks top my list without providing any of that suggestive content?
Which
Well,
one is
here's
it?
your answer.
I said it, Buzzin'. Yeah.
When I first heard this,
That one grew me as well.
I didn't think it would wind up at the top of my list. At the time I thought, well, it's early, maybe there would be worse down the line. Not sure why I thought that, because this was a disaster from the start. The production doesn't provide anything remotely new or interesting.
It's hard-hitting,
It just
I like
feels like
that.
the same old sludge throughout. But the main reason why this track is near unlistenable for me is because of the vocal concept. The suggestive content you would notice in other Brazilian funk tracks is instead replaced with something I never thought someone would have the audacity to do. Because why not go for one of the worst Gen Z memes out there and make it as repetitive as humanly possible? It's just an abysmal track all over, and without a doubt
Wow.
the worst NCS track of 2024.
Oh, for a second I was thinking he was like, ever. But no, he
Now
said
it's
it.
time to talk
He did
about
not
the
say that.
best that NCS had to offer. This
This
time
is
around,
more
the
my
highlights
area
were far stronger
territory.
compared to 2023, and that's
Please, the
mainly
right
due
time
to the
somewhere.
decisions they made at the second half of the year. So let's talk about some
Something has to be here, like that has to be mentioned. Comment, Fell for a Demon, The Right Time, which ones can also be mentioned here. Well, those four, did I say four? Four.
honorable mentions. Grow Apart by Ghost Snaps.
Okay.
It's a pretty
Okay.
underrated track, as is
True.
often the case with some garage releases here. It does
Yeah.
well to utilize a sort of minimalism while still providing a dreamy atmosphere as the drop progresses.
Yeah, especially that
What?
part in between. That was a nice one. Oh, and what is here?
By Jonth. The first track of the year, and as I said
Oh,
before,
my fifth prediction is Sunrise.
it's a track that showcased some upside for him. The resonance within the growls adds an extra dimension to that production. Rave Teacher by Kate.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I love that he mentioned this one. Rave Teacher. I don't know why, but the up and down. That is so something simple. But I like it so much. It just gives the
It is
vibe.
crazy to see Kevu on this label. For those who don't know, he had some massive big room releases around some more main stage labels like Revealed and Rave Culture, and now he's landed
Okay,
on
cool.
NCS with a fairly simple but very catchy hard techno release. Back and Forth by Mansion. Fourth in my mid-year
Code is
ranking,
maybe here,
but it fell
too.
back on me. It still does well.
Oh, did he say something about code?
Mansion. 4th in my mid-year ranking, but it fell back on me. It still does
Oh, that was just
well
okay.
in showcasing its experimentality, combining color base with breakbeats.
Yeah,
The
it was
vocoder is pretty
mentioned.
great as well.
It really did something
Backstreet
cool.
Boy by Netrum and Halverson. The theming
Netrum,
just screams retro, from the production to the references within the lyrics.
The references are really cool. Oh, that's not what I wanted.
List proper if both artists didn't already make it there. Your Poison by Roy Knox. The melodic dubstep synth
totally
is
agree.
a little bit iffy, but I do like that Roy is utilizing some color base within his heavier drops. And finally, Geometry by Tobu and Diviners. Sometimes doing what you do best just works. It's a bright progressive house track where the lead melody and
I miss Diviners sort of a little bit here.
Lead stack work very well together. And with that out of the way, it is finally time to talk about the top 10 best NCS tracks of 2024.
I'm excited.
Number 10. I feel like every time I make these lists, this
some
is
sad
one of
boy
the toughest
songs maybe
spots
too.
to decide. It's the difference between an honorable mention and making my list proper. Ultimately, I've decided to stick with one of my mid-year picks, mainly because it's much more of an earworm than it ever has any right to be.
Oh, this one! I remember him saying this one in the last video. This is a guilty pleasure. This is a guilty pleasure.
When electropop tracks and artists lean towards something a little more vocal-oriented, the production and sound selection around it has to click together in order for it to work.
So true.
I never really expected a mellow production to work so well. As it opens up, the ear candies in the break are pretty great. The echoing vocal chops in the background add on to its progression. And the pads help things swell in the pre-chorus heading into the drops. And the way they are utilized overall, they provide so much into the production while at the same time not overpowering the vocal. It's more of a vibey sort of electropop track, with every element fitting into that sort of tone. I think the main reason why it
nothing to
back
add here
on me was because I thought it was an original vocal at the time.
Oh, what?
I did wind up hearing it again and in a hardstyle ID of all things, but still, I'm glad the star was able to shine brightly. Number 9.
But it was a good one,
and speaking of electropop,
Always Be, This one grew on me a lot. Well, not a lot. It's just a vibe, man.
I don't think anyone's more deserving of representing the orange circle for NCS's anniversary than Netrum. Every time he releases,
I'm still vibing in my head. Did you see that it was still like this?
Mainly because he embraces a retro synthwave style within each release. And while Backstreet Boy may have had the better theming, this track wound up being one of the main highlights of NCS's 13th anniversary.
So true.
The overall production is, well, very danceable, and the vocals from Joanna match up with it to make more of a party tune. The bass helps to add some groove, and the synths help push that retro theming even further. Capitalized by a guitar solo at the end, and the main reason it worked for Netrum and didn't work for Unlike Pluto was because it didn't feel all too forced. It's just there to provide the outro and accentuate the production, but it's more so icing on the cake rather than the cake itself. It's a style we don't often see on this label,
script is cool, man. The script is so
cool. Make a statement out of it. Let's hope he can stick around. Number 8.
I really hope that as well. Like Natrum, what he did there, what he accomplished there, a phenomenal job. My favorite song of his. And Backstreet Boy fell a little bit flat because of that. I was expecting the same sort of vibe, but you cannot really do something twice or thrice or whatever. It was a nice one.
Alright, Guy Arthur made my honorable mentions last year. There was no way he was missing this list proper 2 years in a row.
Not bad. It's just that I hear it now again and I'm like, damn, I'm disappointed a little bit.
This is one of those cases where the production is so good it outweighs the issues I have with this track. And it's
Oh, okay.
a similar case to Seskio and to Soki's Give It To Me, where
No.
really the main issue is the vocal. Sometimes it works,
No, that's
sometimes
not with me. My only issue with this is just the melody. It just fell off. It felt off. And now that I hear it again, I'm not really sure about that 8.1 I gave.
really
But let him
doesn't.
continue.
But there are a lot of elements I can highlight elsewhere. The phased keys and 808 bass lead the instrumentation for the break and provide some energy. And the drops are really cool. The leads are pretty creative, and having them lack in transient, it actually helps them sit better in the mix. And there's an attention to detail that helps maintain the energy of this track. Hopefully we get to see more of Guy Arthur on this label, because this call just ain't worth missing.
Yeah, to see more Guy Arthur, I am totally in for that, because his previous work, like the year before, it was sort of a highlight of 2023.
Number 7. But while I'm glad to see Guy Arthur return, the vocals were kinda shaky. And they're also the main reason why this Lavender Circle is better.
Crowded room. Totally agree. Woohoo! I remember the reaction again. Wild.
Black and White was number 4 on my best list last year,
Oh,
but
that's
I think
yeah,
I
that's
like
right.
this track even more. The lyricism here is much better than Ain't Miss a Call, where Josh addresses a sort of anxiety and asks if it's relatable. The paradox of being alone in a crowded room, where life may seem lonely on the outside, but mentally it feels like you're surrounded. The production throughout carries that emotional tone, especially around the drops, which are led by some guitar-based leads and are overall fairly expected. But in terms of specifics, there are 2 things that stand out to me.
Is he going to
mention it? First of all,
it?
the echoed vocals help manage the progression of the drop. And
before we continue, maybe he doesn't know, or he did not mention it at all. Nicodemus and Highland work uncredited here, so they did something to the melody too. So that's something that you have to
secondly, I
mention.
love how the drop ends, with the reverb of the leads just playing all the way out.
Yeah.
You know, maybe we should have some more Lavender Circles on this label.
Agree.
Number 6.
Completely.
So you've probably heard of the term high risk, high reward. It is often used in financial circles, but it could apply to the EDM scene. When an artist tries to go experimental or do something outside of their comfort zone, it's something I often respect, but that doesn't always mean it's going to work, either for me or for the general consensus. But in a year where it feels like way too many tracks play it way too safe,
Bonfire's Green,
the risk pays off, and it pays off abundantly.
Scylla in Bonfire's Green. I agree. That caught me off guard a little bit when it came out. Some peak Jersey Club.
A few months after
I don't fucking hear it if it's Jersey Club. It's apparently is. I just don't hear it.
Hearing this, I found out that Cielo was part of Varian's return on Monster Cat back in 2022 with Full Assault. A track that I thought was awful, but in a way it did show a part of his experimentality. This track was just a breath of fresh air in comparison to what was around it. And there's a lot I can...
Oh, that's totally true. We were still in a January vibe. And when I look back at it, I hate 2023. I am beginning to hate it because the 2023 vibe was still present in January of 2024. I'm sorry, Janvins, you did it well enough at your part. I was just sick of that pop. They're maybe still nice to hear 1 or 2 times a month, and I can still give them a 7 or a little bit higher. But damn, I hated that actually when I'm looking back at it. Also the Daniel Levi LP, and also Route, his EP. Nah, that was not belonging to NCS. And this. It was a really great fresh air moment in Bonfire's Green after all that. And of course we had a lot other stuff like Memory Box was also in February, and Throne and Romeo and Juliet. But this one, yeah, I agree on that.
Especially in the drops. The choir elements here provide an emphatic
Choirs.
wall of noise along with the Jersey
Praise the
club production.
choirs!
The call and response tactic works well with it, and the response in particular goes in a stop and start sort of fashion to provide a sense of dynamics. And the riser in the second drop is a really nice touch to add some energy. It was number 6 in my mid-year ranking video, and yet could have risen even higher on this list. This risk was absolutely worth taking. Number 5. So drum and bass had a pretty big year, not just on NCS, but in general.
Drum and bass was huge last year.
To explain my stance properly, I'll have to divide it into 3 subgenres. Starting with Neurofunk, which is probably my least favorite of the 3. It can work sometimes, but it often winds up being pretty sloppy and abrasive for me. Then we've got Liquid Drum and Bass, a much safer genre, but it's a bit difficult to stand out there. The percussion is a bit weaker.
But Look No Further and Underrated did it really well. And Falling by Centric, of course.
More vocal oriented. And then we have Dance Floor Drum and Bass.
I exactly do this as well. Like you have Liquid, Dance Floor and Neurofunk. Then you say where it belongs, Jump Up or Dark Step. To Neurofunk, the darker side. And, well, not mainstream, minimalistic drum and bass or atmospheric belong to the Liquid part.
Favorite of the 3, which packs more of a punch and yet is a lot more cohesive. And in terms of which dance floor drum and bass songs stood out the most,
Free Fall?
Well, if you paid attention to my mid-year video, you should know exactly
here it is. The song I'm getting a little bit sick of. But still, man, you cannot dislike this. It's just I heard it so much last year. Because of the remixes, because of...
Even when More Plastic try and hop back to the Neurofunk scene,
one of the first songs
this track tells the biggest story. Released at the start of the year and wound up being one of the biggest highlights even before things really got going. Halverson's vocals have some great chemistry with More Plastic's production to provide a more adventurous tone. The lead melody helps maintain that adventurous energy, and the drops pack a punch and showcase the upside of dance floor drum and bass. But as I was taking a closer look at the lyricism, I noticed something interesting. In the verses, it seems like the left and right side of the brain are talking to each other. With the left side of the brain being oriented around logic, the right side criticizes that logic and wants to push for a more optimistic perspective.
I'm going to look into that when I listen to this again.
This track encapsulated the optimism I had for this label heading into the rest of the year. And several tracks have proven that I had every right to be optimistic. Want to know another example? Number 4.
Oh, okay, but have I something to say about Sunrise? Well, that second drum, of course. And that I didn't really expect something from More Plastic in that way. Well, One Taste was something like that. But More Plastic Sunrise was even better.
An artist makes their return to a label, there's no guarantee that the track they return with will be any good. Sadly, at least for me, November on Monster Cat was kind of proof of that.
Fell for
exciting and mostly welcome returns, but the tracks they returned with weren't really anything special. But with this...
a little bit off topic, but I'm sort of looking forward to the newer modern years of Monster Cat when I eventually get there. I'm at 2015, by the way, with ranking. It's just that I sort of hear here and there that it's all a little bit the same rhythm and too clashy. Even for me, so maybe the newer years are going to be sort of rough, with also many releases per month sometimes. So I'm sort of looking forward to that, but also a little bit not.
Return, not only did it live up to expectations, but it provided something more. Not just the return of the artist in question, but also the return of a style that has made NCS so popular and never should have left to begin with.
True! So true, man! Fucking hell. I hate 2023. Oh! Man. Maybe I want to do like a sort of highlight video again for 2023, but not as a highlight, but as a looking back video. Audio? What the fuck?
This return
my headphones or was it YouTube?
As surprising as it should have been for me. Perhaps Nostalgia by Janji and Johnning was a precursor of things to come. Because, well, if NCS can bring them back, they can do anything. This is the sort of progressive house that this label has been
missing. Give me chills.
And it's a style that Toby does so well with time and time again.
Although Bowtie Media didn't really like this one.
A dreamy atmosphere with the piano flares, the ARP, and the guitars. The fills and the breaker are a really nice touch as well. And the drops show exactly what Toby does best.
Yeah.
The lead melody is awesome, and the
So
production
true.
elsewhere meshes well with it.
So true.
If I were to be a bit nitpicky, I would say the lead stack could be a bit stronger. As I was working on my year-end mix, I noticed that the leads were a bit more oriented around the highs of the mix. I would say Geometry had the better lead stack, but holistically, Faster was the bigger statement for me.
Yeah,
And
I agree on that, totally.
Of things to come. Number 3.
The right side, please.
I'm fully aware that I did not take this track into account in my mid-year ranking video for a couple of reasons.
Right,
when I first heard it, I thought it was a bit lethargic, and well, we already have the likes of Sabai and Yetza play to similar styles with, let's say, varying degrees of success. So I did not expect this track to get anywhere near as much acclaim as it did. To the point where fellow Ranker's all-time favorite NCS song. I'm sorry, what? Being a fellow Ranker's all-time favorite NCS song. I'm sorry.
Are you talking about me?
Sorry.
Are you talking about me? What? Wait.
NCS song. I'm sorry. Where it wound up being a fellow.
Well, again.
To get anywhere near as much acclaim as it did. To the point where it wound up being a fellow Ranker's all-time favorite NCS song. I'm sorry, what? But at the end of 2024, yeah, maybe it does deserve the acclaim after
I'm blushing. What the hell? I'm going to comment this.
all.
The song that deserves the spot. I don't have to explain anything here. Jesus Christ.
As I said before, sometimes the tracks that stand out the most are the ones that tell the clearest stories. And here, Youth in Circles, Illuvium, and Say We Can Fly team up for a melancholic melodic dubstep track that's centered around the struggle of letting go. I mentioned Sabai earlier, and he actually gets a fair bit of criticism over on Monster Cat, mainly due to his whiny vocal.
Don't know who that is, by the way. That's
I can make the argument that this track differs from that in a couple of ways. First off, the vocal chops here are much more drawn out and much less random. And second, and perhaps more importantly,
they make a difference.
The ambience around it is amazing. With
yes,
on emotion,
you get it.
And, dare I say,
I think almost everyone gets this
in a really good way. I especially love the faint screeches in the background that just add on to that desperation, and it proves that a little bit.
Yeah,
of detail
now I remember
can go a long
that this was not in this previous video. I was like, whoa. So maybe I commented there about that, and then he remembered this one.
I got this one wrong. Maybe I just had to wait for the right time for this track to eventually click with me. Number 2. It's still weird to think that this track was close to being cancelled. It's especially infuriating because at the time it felt like one of the only tracks that had some genuine potential. But for the reasons why, I get it. Copyright's pretty tough to deal with sometimes. But after the issues were sorted out, it wound up being delayed.
What am I hearing? Oh, someone is drilling. Why? Why are you drilling? I hope that was not really hearable in the video as of now.
To a different month rather than cancelled entirely. And it's from an artist I've been rooting for since I first heard about him in 2021. He made my honorable mentions last year, but I thought he had the potential to take things one step further.
Yeah, true. He did that here.
He did it with his best NCS release to date.
I agree on that one. That just high-pitched noise is so nostalgic.
When it comes to happy hardcore, sometimes the lead melody can either make or break a track, especially when there isn't much to take note of elsewhere. JJD's Can't Say No wasn't exactly one of those cases because outside of the drop, there were some pretty catchy elements. But Lost My Love would not be this high if it wasn't for the prioritized sweeping leads here.
You can drill all day.
Or they could get a bit screechy on occasion, but I would argue that adds on to the emotion. And the overall production helps provide some energy while at the same time maintaining the emphasis on those leads. It was a track that I and so many others were anticipating from the moment it was introduced.
Yeah.
It really could have taken my number 1 spot. But before we find out what did, I'd like to take a moment to advertise my gaming channel. I've got a lot of content.
Go subscribe there, but I'm going to skip this part of the video.
At this point, This song needs no introduction.
Agree. That's your right time moment. I think this is one of the most loved songs ever.
It's crazy to see Skybreak on this label, especially given that he released Out of Frame on Monster Cat in the same month. But he's made it here,
that's right. I remember
what
that.
a way to do it. Combined with the return of Keepsake,
Really,
I don't know if I can say what hasn't already been said. As much as I love Skybreak's color,
I had it with the right time.
He's proven that he can work with melodic drum step as well. And remember what I said about attention to detail earlier? Yeah, Skybreak is no stranger to that. The piano flares are fantastic. The drop is
it's just completely full of sound.
Post drop where Keepsake lets go. That's when the track is at its most triumphant. When some people would go as far to call this NCS's magnum opus, that says a lot. And what makes it stand above...
This song opened something that's not closed.
Of the rest is...
Made that any sense? I mean, it started an era, a greater era, that really closed the book of 2023's era. I still disgust that year now.
Not just its modern...
I'm beginning to really dislike it when I'm thinking of it.
But that it showcases exactly what makes NCS so memorable for so many.
Yeah.
That is why Comet by Skybreak and Keepsake is the best NCS track of 2024. Well, this video took a long time to sort out, but hopefully y'all enjoyed it. Let me know if...
I did. And of course, give this song a like. And of course, give this video a like. Give my video a like if you loved it. And maybe I will react to this again at the midpoint of this year. I just loved watching this type of videos, especially for someone that's not so really known. 32 subscribers. Only 1 like. Yeah, he deserves so much more. But this was this video for today. A much chiller video for a Sunday. Or I hope I can still give this out on a Sunday. I hope. If not, then just see this as a Sunday. And I will say like every other time, bye.